Okay, I think that's everyone that's there for now. So I will start if you're ready, Jacqueline.
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay. So firstly, thank you to everyone that's joined. My name's Chris Goulding. I'm the Managing Director at Wade McDonald. I'm pleased to say for you that you won't have to look at my face for too much longer, because I'm going to pass you over to Jacqueline very shortly. I'm presuming that most of you will have an idea of who we are as we've invited you, but just as a quick brief overview, we're specialists in HR and financial recruitment, and we are currently celebrating 30 years in business. This is the 5th webinar in a series that we've been running over the past 6 months or so during the pandemic. We've previously spoken about staff welfare, mental health, employee expectations of their employee post-pandemic, and the legal considerations you should have when you're actually returning to the office. Today we're lucky enough to have Jacqueline Harris with us. Jacqueline is a very experienced coach, trainer and facilitator who specialises in all aspects of leadership, sales, diversity and inclusion and interpersonal excellence. As we're heading out of restrictions, we're seeing the majority of our clients entering into a period of hybrid working, so offering a mixture between home and office working. Jacqueline's going to complete our series of webinars by introducing strategies to cope with hybrid working, and in particular she's going to cover how to lead and manage in a hybrid environment, balancing your business needs with people's individual needs, how to be inclusive and fair whilst working in a hybrid manner, and learning and development in the new world. So I will pass straight over to Jacqueline and hide myself. Thanks a lot, Jacqueline.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me just share my screen. So thank you, Chris, for that introduction. And just to say just a tiny bit more about who I am and my background. So I come from a business background before going into training and coaching. So I was for 16 years in banking, became a bank manager. So I know what it's like to be running a business from a people perspective and an operational perspective. And I bring that to as well as now 20+ years experience of developing people to the work that I do now. And over the last 20+ years, I've worked with all sorts of clients, from smaller business to larger corporates, from the PricewaterhouseCoopers of this world to Vodafone, and now I'm one of the particular pieces of work I'm doing a lot of is working with the UK Atomic Energy Authority. So a number of different sectors. I have a huge interest in this topic, hybrid working, as I'm sure those of you who've come along today have too. And I came across this phrase, work as an activity, not a place, at a meeting that I attended a while ago, which was around some discussions on hybrid working. No one would have believed, in the words of Jeff Wayne and War of the Worlds, no one would have believed 2 years ago that in 2020 offices would have shut down and the majority of people would have started working from home. It might have been something that we thought might happen in 50 years' time, but we wouldn't have believed that it was going to happen so quickly. I never thought I would be able to run training and facilitate workshops from my own office at home. I already knew it was possible with coaching, although my preference would always have been to do that face-to-face. Now, I know that I believe that I can do it. I've hardly left this room for 18 months, and I know that I can do it, and it can be hugely effective. There's been a seismic shift in where and how we work. And now what's interesting is offices are opening up. The new term of hybrid working has emerged. This practice, though, of hybrid working is not new, but it's new to most of us. And I think as a consequence, in terms of the opportunity to go back to offices, it may be tempting to go back to old ways of working, but the world has changed. And looking at the list of those of you who've come along today, I know you were all from different organisations with different cultures and business needs, and you will be at different stages of your move to hybrid working. You may have come along today because you are looking for ideas and tips on how to implement hybrid working in your organisation or in your team. Or you may be interested in the subject from a more personal perspective in terms of what that means for you as a manager and leader in your workplace. There is a huge amount of information and articles available on this subject because it is such a hot topic. What I'm conscious of is that the move to hybrid working is contemporaneous with the return to office working and amidst issues around COVID, hence this kind of meshing of the two coming together, and that can cloud the subject a little bit. So what I'm going to focus on today is purely on hybrid working. And as an executive coach and a facilitator, I'm coming from the business perspective and also the leadership and management perspective. I'm fascinated by this topic and particularly the people aspect of it, because after all, it's going to be the people who make it work. If you have any questions around the more legal aspects or the more kind of operational aspects, I'm sure we can find one of the lawyers that we know or an HR consultant who can help to answer those specific questions. So as you may well know, if you've experienced coaching, coaching is more about asking questions than giving answers. And today, whilst I will share some of my thoughts with you and what I've picked up from talking to others, I will also offer you some questions to consider. And I'll be happy to have a one-to-one with any of you afterwards to talk them through or anything from your perspective. Chris has also already given a bit of an overview of what we'll be touching on today. What I want to be looking at is why hybrid working. Let's just kind of step back from it, why it might be right for your business from a holistic perspective, some factors to consider in implementing it, and perhaps a different take on that you might not have thought of before. This area of hybrid leadership, as I've coined the phrase, in terms of what does that mean, and particularly about being fair and inclusive. I'm happy to answer your questions. If you've got any, if you'd like to type them in chat, and I'll try and have a look at those, well, at least at the end if we've got time to answer your questions. And if we don't have time, I'd be really happy to take those questions with you offline. Just as a note today, for your best experience of watching this webinar today, I don't know whether you've discovered it before, but if the version of Zoom that you're using is appropriate, you might find it best to watch this in the view that's side by side, and then I won't get lost too much in the ether of other names on the screen, and you'll get the best opportunity. I'm going to stop sharing for the moment and just kind of come back to thinking about some questions I would like to ask you all, and to ask you, to get you to think about. You may have already thought about them, but this is an opportunity. As in coaching, I give people space and time to think, and this is an opportunity for you today. So why is hybrid working right for your organization? Why might it not be right? It's kind of quite good to look at that from both sides of things. We've kind of been a little bit driven potentially towards it right now, so it's worth exploring those. What are you basing that on? And is this being driven by the demands and expectations of your people, or is it being driven by business need? And we'll touch on that a little bit more shortly. So those questions I've put up on this slide, just for you to see, so some things to think about. So in terms of why is it right for your organization, why might it not be right, and what are you basing it on? Let's start to have a look at what the hybrid working model might be for your organization. I'm calling this about finding the balance. And where do you start? You may have already started. I mentioned that I'm a part-time contractor with UK Atomic Energy Authority, and they moved to hybrid working right away on the 19th of July. They've got people coming back in a phased fashion. And other organisations I know are planning for a September start to it, but there's no definitive in terms of what you should do, and it's about doing it as and when things are right for you. Let's explore some of the aspects that are part of the whole system of your business, this holistic review about taking all of that into the mix, if you like. To simplify it, I've broken this down into organization, team, and individuals. And as I think about this, by the way, I remember someone asking at another discussion event that I was at a few months ago about who is doing this well already, so that we can learn from them. And at that time, my thought was that it's also new from everyone, so we'll just have to learn from each other as we go along. And I think it's right that we will be learning from each other as we go along. But what I now know is that there are some organisations for whom this isn't new and have been doing this for many years, such as the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. They've adopted a hybrid working model about 4 years ago. And they are still learning. When you talk to the head of people, head of HR, they're still learning. A couple of things I picked up from them. What's interesting is they've decided, balancing all of these out together, that they've gone for what they're calling a 40-40 rule, that 40% of the people are expected to be in the office 40% of the time. And that's part of the model that they've adopted. And like UKAEA, they have decided that permanent home working is not an option for them. A couple of the other key messages that I've picked up from them are they really highlighted the importance of skills of managers to have what they're calling important conversations. And I would say they're probably more about sensitive conversations, and how leaders need to be more emotionally intelligent. And I'll pick that up again a little bit later. So let's have a look at this diagram. As I say, I do quite like to simplify things. So organizationally, what is the benefit of hybrid working for you? And have a look at it from all perspectives. The most obvious ones that are coming out at the moment are businesses thinking about premises. Maybe you're outgrowing existing premises, and if you adopt a hybrid working approach, you won't need to take on bigger premises. It might be that you can downsize premises, or maybe move your premises to a cheaper area, perhaps. Or you might be looking at employee engagement, and that might be what's driving this. But have a look at it in the round and in the whole. If there are other things that are occurring to you around all of this, then please pop them into the chat box. And thinking around your organization, what are the needs of your customers? What are the needs of your suppliers? How will they be affected by this? What about all other stakeholders? So it's looking at it in the round. With your teams, what are the needs of your teams and business units? Perhaps they've thrived during remote working, but are there any elements that have suffered? And will these elements still exist in a hybrid working model, and how can you address them? With individuals, it feels like much of the drive for hybrid working is coming from employees. And I know that Wade McDonald and their recent research has been saying about what employees' expectations are. Those who have enjoyed working from home have found that they are more productive and have found a better work-life balance. But we must also remember that there are some who haven't thrived And I've come across a number of people who I've been coaching over the last 18 months where it's highlighted some particular mental health challenges. So one organisation that I know of, I thought was kind of quite an interesting example they've taken here about finding that balance. And they've approached this with two key elements. They've looked at what are the roles that exist in the organisation. Interestingly, they call them persona, such as customer facing, sales, telephone support, and what working arrangements are required for each role stroke task. And then they've been having what they call preference conversations with their people. These are sensitive conversations to find out what kind of working will work for them, but also that might involve a change of role to fit into whatever the organisation needs. So I thought that was an interesting example. So this term hybrid, do you know, I'd only come across the word hybrid really used in two ways previously. In nature, where animals or plants are bred from two different species to produce a hybrid, and from cars, where what I think is really interesting with cars, we've gone from petrol stroke diesel fuel to hybrid, and now we're going to fully electric. Whereas, of course, with work, it feels like we went from all in the office, equivalent of petrol and diesel, to fully electric, all at home. And now we're looking at something in the middle. As we move back from virtual to hybrid working, we've got an opportunity to take the best of what we have learned through virtual working and to combine that with the office aspect. But through that, I think we've got this opportunity to combine the best of both worlds, but I think produce a third way of working, because to take the best of both doesn't necessarily give us this kind of amazing 2 + 2 = 5 opportunity. And it's taking it to the next level, such as technology, for example. We know the technology works, but let's not get complacent about that technology, as we may need to develop it further, such as collaboration tools. So I know we've got this amazing opportunity, and it's going to really absolutely evolve as time goes on. It's not about getting it perfect right now, and I think that's the important thing. It was just about taking a starting point. So what does hybrid mean for your organisation? What are your expectations of your people? What does the business need? Hybrid leadership is this phrase, and I can't really overemphasize a key element of the success of hybrid working. Yes, there's the operational aspect of it, but there really is the leadership and management skills within your organization. Virtual working, remote working was forced on many, and we adapted and we learned. Many will have had mixed experiences. And I know, again, from all the coaching that I've been doing since March last year, that there have been mixed levels of ability in terms of leadership and management. And I've come across that both from the leaders and managers themselves, but also for people in their teams. Virtual working has really put a spotlight on the management and leadership capabilities in businesses. And because it was viewed as temporary, from what I've seen, little has been done to take it from a that'll do to a high level. With some senior managers I've been working with, they've been focused very much on the operational side of their role. Understandably, it's all about how do we get the operation up and running, and not the people side. Some of the really good ones have been able to combine the two. For hybrid working to be successful, many managers will need to spend more time on the people management side of their role, and to develop greater emotional intelligence. So let's have a look at some of the things that I need I believe need to be changed and developed further, that are going to be emphasized. This is not a completely definitive list. These are just some of my thoughts. So if we look at behaviors, the daily check-ins with teams and individuals, some of you may be thinking, yes, we're doing that now, and that's great if you've got good practice in that. But daily check-ins with teams and individuals to see how they're doing. Do you know, and there's some great technology out there now, in terms of, so this is not just about where they are, but how they are from a motivational perspective, from a well-being perspective. The knowing who is where on a daily basis, kind of managing it. With virtual working, you all know that everybody's at home, but who's going to be in the office and where and when and what are they going to be doing? That's something that managers are going to need to have a really good handle on. Agreeing clear performance objectives so people know what's expected of them. Having well-being conversations, being available, because that's one of the big things that I've discovered through virtual working is when people want to just ask their manager a quick question, it's very difficult because schedules are rammed full. So being available to the people, having open and important conversations, how are people doing, taking feedback from them. And doing all of this, I think, without micromanaging, because there is a danger that micromanaging comes in. So again, it's about getting a balance and facilitating the social interactions amongst teams. And you can see in some of the skills here that I've listed that I think are going to be really important. Let me just pull out a couple of these. Managing outputs and performance are absolutely critical. And I'm going to come back into that in a moment, because that's as much about skills, as much about mindset as it is about skills to do that. And let me pick up also in terms of hybrid meeting skills. Some of the big tech companies have been doing this well for many years, where they've had people all over the world and people in the room and people elsewhere, and have been able to run meetings very well. At the moment, I think we're still learning to use that technology. And we need to think about things like, well, if you have half of your people in a room for a meeting and the rest joining via Zoom or whatever your platform is, how can you make sure that the people who are dialing in remotely get as much airtime as the people in the room, and depending on who's chairing it, it really is going to be very critical to have good chairing skills around meetings to make sure that everybody can participate. So just a few of my thoughts around skills and behaviours, and I'll be really happy to take any questions on all of those. What underpins all of this? We often don't change behaviours or develop skills until we believe that we need to. So we absolutely need to change our beliefs in order to change our behaviours if we want things to happen differently. And particularly what I alluded to earlier is this piece about from managing presence to managing outputs. We are still very much culturally around presenteeism in many offices and many organisations. And I had a really interesting example recently, and I know this is partly COVID related because it's about furlough, but I think it really illustrates this point. In one organisation, they've been using the furlough scheme a lot, and people are working part-time, and they had a particular individual who was working 2 hours a day and the rest of the time being furloughed. And this person has just brought in a big new client, a huge piece of business. And on the back of that, they are rewarded by commission. So they are due to receive some substantial commission for winning that new client. And the business have been questioning that as to whether that person should get the commission because they're only working 2 hours a day. So what they're not doing is equating the output. The output is that that person, even though they've only been working 2 hours a day, has had this success and that they have achieved that performance. So I think that's going to be quite a huge mindset shift of people. And also in terms of then that leads on to skills to enable us to actually have real conversations about how we're measuring performance of people. Within all of this, in terms of thinking differently, we do need to think about training and mentoring. Many of you may have experienced some of those challenges with remote working around how do you develop people, particularly that on-the-job kind of training. I really feel for all those people who have taken on new roles, and some of you may have, while being remote. I'm coaching somebody at the moment who has only met one colleague face to face in the last 6 months, and another organisation where I'm training their people. I've been working with them for many years. They're pensions administration people, and I have been helping them to deal with some of the more challenging conversations that they have over the telephone and taking incoming difficult telephone calls. And they have recruited almost 30 new people since March 2020. And all of the people that I've been training, they've had to pick up on this from home. And what they have been missing is listening to their colleagues dealing with some of these telephone calls. So they're not hearing some good practice and some good examples. So it's going to, training and mentoring from that perspective is going to need even more of a conscious effort, planning and organizing. And maybe, I don't know, but finding ways to make it work. Does it mean that when somebody's going through a particular learning phase, that you need to arrange for them to be in the office more and the people you want them to learn from? Or is there some technology base that you could do that? You know, I've thought of, you know, could you set up a webcam? It's not just about the one coming through from the computer, but it's so that somebody can kind of be listening in to somebody's office at home and be knowing what they're doing. I think we will need to be much smarter about that. And then, of course, there's more formal training and development. And, you know, we know it can be done remotely. We know it can be done face to face. And I think the next phase is what's going to happen in terms of what we need to do from when do we need people in the room to do training, and when can some of that be delivered remotely, and when can it be done through e-learning, which I think is a huge focus, and getting a blend of learning for everybody. And the next element, the third element I want to think about in terms of this thinking differently, is thinking differently about teams. You know, let's learn from what we've been doing in terms of virtual. Let's put it on the agenda and be really thinking about how do we develop teams, how do we create that team culture. Social connections are so important. And I remember, gosh, about 15 years ago, doing some work with one of the big high street banks who had some remote teams in their business function, in their business banking operation, and wanting to do some work about how to manage them remotely. And one of the things that particularly came out of that is thinking about how best you use that time when you were all face to face, and how important that time face to face is not about just giving information. That can be done in different ways, but how that social interactions are so important. And I think also to be thinking about how do you keep those social connections going when people are working remotely. And another example that I have is somebody who I'm coaching at the moment who, as part of their team at work, is feeling very excluded. Now they're all remote working, and they've put in place lots of Teams chat groups to keep people socially connected. Well, she's not really a lover of Teams chats, and the conversations going on are quite cliquey. And so she feels excluded from that. And I've been working with her to find out ways in which she can include or feel included a bit more within the team. But it's not, it's a two-way street. It's not just her, it's about the team and the team leader. With teams collaboration, that's such an important aspect, isn't it? And when people are in the office, they can just say to somebody, what about this or what about that? I think we still have room to go in terms of how do we develop that for this hybrid working. There are tools out there. It's about what the opportunities are. It's about planning time to do that as well. So all conscious thought from the team leader. Another aspect of this in terms of the team is about communication. And particularly what I'm thinking about is that we know some individuals have worked much longer hours, have struggled with work-life balance, have not been able to switch off and been working, answering emails in the evening, but also, and have found that quite tough. And others have thrived on it because they've taken time out during the day to go and do things that they want to do, and then will work and choose to work later in the day. So again, how as a manager can you get a handle on that and think about what should we be doing in terms of communicating with each other? For example, some teamship rules. I often talk about teamship rules, but things about how you're going to communicate with each other. Do you have a rule, as some organizations have already brought in, that you don't send emails after a certain time, after 5 o'clock or whatever it might be? Or if you know that people are choosing to work at different times, do you have something else in place to say that you can choose to send emails, but it's not expected that you have to respond to emails out of hours? And how and when do you contact each other? That all needs to be worked out from a team perspective, what the team needs and what individuals need. From what I'm saying, you can probably see how I do believe this hybrid leadership is so important, and investing and supporting your leaders and managers is critical to the success of this. You may already have some really well-developed leaders and managers. You may have focused on that in your organization. And it is just simply helping them to adapt to the hybrid side of things. And I think that's a great starting point, is to create forums where they can come together and share best practice, talk about challenges, and just have this on the agenda. It's not about operational things, it's about how they're working. For other organizations where those leadership and management skills haven't been particularly well developed, or maybe you're a smaller organization and you haven't been able to invest, it's kind of looking about how can you do that now? Do you need to have some formal development programs? Do you need some mentoring? Is there some coaching? What is it that you need? It's going to be so important. And one aspect of this, as organizations need to be thinking about as individuals and as leaders, is about being fair and inclusive. Because you may have seen reports in the media and social media about concerns about certain groups being disadvantaged because they prefer to spend less time in the office, or need to spend less time in the office. So, if we take, for example, gender, women still tend to have more of the caring responsibilities and therefore may choose to spend less time in the office than men. And as a result, we'll come on to a minute, that it may mean that they become disadvantaged as a result. Age may be another factor. We're already finding that younger people, and this, I know these are all generalizations, are preferring the office environment. They want to be there, they want social connections, they want to make friends, they want to be with other people. And therefore, other generations older people may not be needing that and may be working from home more. And again, that may mean that there's a disadvantage, but also may have a real impact on your office culture. Abilities and disabilities. People with disabilities might find it physically easier to work at home. People might find that it's less tiring without commuting when they've got such conditions as MS or Parkinson's, for example. They may prefer not to have that commute so often. You might find that if you've got employees who are neurodiverse, for example, on the autistic spectrum, that they're happier to work at home rather than being in a big, noisy, open plan office where they can't concentrate, or even worse, they might have to face hot desking, so they're not having that their routines are broken. And what we're talking about here really is, what's the danger? It is the danger is there's a natural instinct of out of sight, out of mind. And so it needs conscious thought to make sure that those who are not in the office so often are included. Some of you may have done some work around unconscious bias. As the name implies, it's about biases that we are not conscious of, and it usually suggests negative biases. So those unconscious biases come from influences of our upbringing, our environment, our experiences. And one aspect of that is that you might unconsciously favour the people you have most contact with. You might share more information with them. You might build more rapport and connection with them. You might give them more interesting work, A, because the opportunity is there, or because you've built that rapport and connection, you kind of trust them a bit more. You might give them more development opportunities. They may get more promotion opportunities, either because they're there or because they've been given the interesting work and the development opportunities, and they're more ready for promotion. And it might impact on their performance reviews. What's interesting is that at the start of the pandemic, the Office for National Statistics did some research into models of working and the impact of chances of getting promoted. So they did this based on information right at the start of the pandemic. So historically, about people who were already working from home. Two things particularly came out of that. One is that a third of the people who were working remotely worked more hours than usual. And also they were less than half as likely to receive promotion compared to those working in the office. Quite stunning statistics. So some of the things that we could do about that because if we're aware of the potential dangers, scheduling more time with people who are in the office less. So more consciously spending time with them, following a process when giving out work, projects and opportunities, or promoting and awarding pay rises. Perhaps managers to have a bias buddy to challenge them around some of their decisions and activities, and creating and maintaining a culture that encourages transparency and openness, so employees feel able to speak up and say when they're feeling isolated, stressed, or need to talk. And some of your managers, some of you will adapt more easily to this than others. Before I summarize what I've been talking about today, I think we've got one comment in the chat. I don't know whether that's a question. Oh, well, good morning. Good morning to you too. If you've got any questions that you would like me to answer, if you'd like to type them in chat, I'd be happy to do so. As there aren't any there at the moment, let me go on to my summary slide. So I hope I've made you think today, and I hope it's given you an opportunity to think about the subject. And if you take one thing away, I would be happy. The strategic approach, finding the balance between the organisation, the team, the task, the individual needs. I started with work is an activity, not a place. Perhaps that should now be work as an output, not a place. clear and open communication, creating this best of both to create the third way, mindset shift, key roles of managers. They're all things that I've covered. Couple of questions to end with. What are the key considerations for you and your organisation? And what do you need to focus on? So have a think about that before you go back to your next meeting or whatever it might be. And let me know if you'd like to talk through any of these, what we've talked about today. My contact details are here. I know that Chris and Wade McDonald will also share those with you, but please feel free to jot these down, take a photo of this, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm really happy to have a conversation. Let me hand back to Chris.
I should have appeared back on the screen if I've done that right, Jacqueline, but if I haven't, then no one will know I'm here. But
I can see you, Chris.
Good. Just a massive thank you. It's definitely given me some things to think about. I think the unconscious bias thing is very interesting, and I actually think the promotion of people that you see more than not is a very interesting point to bring up, because I think as a manager, it's easier to have those in mind that you see more often. So that's definitely something I'll be looking at. You know, from our side, being a sales organisation, the collaboration and communication piece is huge. So some good things to think about there from me. So thank you very much for all of that. Thank you to everyone that's joined. I'm conscious of time because I think we're right on it. You've nailed it, Jacqueline. So all to say is that we will send out an email afterwards with Jacqueline's contact details so that you can get in contact with her. Obviously, if there's anything you want from us in terms of recruitment, then we're here to help. If you want to hear what our clients are doing, what our candidates want, then please shout out to us, and we're happy to have those discussions. It's really interesting for us to hear how businesses are adapting to this modern world that we're in at the moment. But other than that, just thank you for turning up. We'll keep you notified about anything that we're doing going forward. And thank you again, Jacqueline. That's brilliant.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
You're welcome.